This podcast contains graphic content and may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is strongly advised.
True North True Crime is produced on the territories of the Coast Salish people.
On September 11th, 2023, 22-year-old Sherry Corrigal was dropped off by a friend near the intersection of Franklin Street and Selby Street in Nanaimo, British Columbia. Sherry has not been seen or heard from since. There has been no activity on her social media accounts or on her bank accounts. Those who knew Sherry said she recently started associating with the wrong crowd and began using drugs. However, they emphasize that she is still loved and missed dearly. Sherry has now been missing for almost a year, and her loved ones desperately want to bring her home. Tonight, we are covering the missing persons case of Sherry Corrigal, and you're listening to True North True Crime. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 100 of True North True Crime. We started our podcast 4 years ago in our Vancouver apartment under a blanket in the middle of a pandemic, and we're still at it 4 years later, so a massive thank you to all who have been with us since the beginning, and of course to those who have joined us along the way. I'm your host, Caitlin, and with me as always is my co-host, Graham. To those of you who have been with us from the very start, thanks for putting up with two rookies just doing their best to put out the best content that they could. As we continue along our podcasting journey, we are hopefully going to continue to grow and improve, and I'm sure we'll look back on our 100th episode and cringe like we do now when we look back on our first episodes. But in all seriousness, we appreciate every single person who has ever tuned in to even one of our episodes. We feel very blessed to be where we are today with True North True Crime, and we hope you'll stay with us as we release 100 more episodes. So for our 100th episode, we are going to be covering the disappearance of Nanaimo woman Sherry Corrigal. Sitting down with us for this episode is one of Sherry's foster mothers, Jami, who we are very grateful to for sharing more about Sherry with us, as there's not a lot of detailed information about her online. As always, if you have a case suggestion for us, please email truenorthtruecrime@gmail.com. We will always prioritize cases that come to us directly from family members or close contacts of a case, but are happy to receive suggestions from everyone. With that, let's go ahead and get into today's episode and tell you a bit about the city in which it takes place, Nanaimo. Nanaimo is located on the central and eastern coast of Vancouver Island. A 90-minute ferry ride from Vancouver, known as the Harbor City since 1986, Nanaimo offers stunning ocean and mountain views, blending urban convenience with natural beauty. Its diverse economy includes technology, education, healthcare, retail, and tourism, supported by strong port and transportation infrastructure. The housing market features a range of options, from waterfront properties to townhouses, with prices remaining relatively affordable compared to Vancouver. However, residents have noted a significant increase in crime, with violent crime rates 48% above the national average and overall crime 98% higher. In June 2023, frustrated residents held a rally calling for stronger measures to address crime and street disorder. Nanaimo, like many other Canadian cities, faces challenges with homelessness, exacerbated by issues such as the toxic drug crisis, drug trafficking, sex trafficking, and violence within some of those homeless encampments. In March 2023, 5 men went to a homeless encampment in Nanaimo looking to recover items from one of their auto shops that had been stolen by members of the unhoused community. A 49-year-old owner of a Nanaimo auto repair shop was shot in the stomach and seriously injured by a man by the name of Craig Truckle of no fixed address. The group had retrieved the stolen items and were making their way away from the encampment when a man emerged from one of the tents with a rifle and began shooting at them. The shooting victim had to undergo 3 surgeries and have part of his colon removed in order to save his life. In response to this incident, the Nanaimo RCMP cautioned against vigilantism. Constable Gary O'Brien emphasized that involving the police could have led to a safer resolution and warned against residents putting themselves in danger over stolen property. The Crown dropped all charges against the shooter, Craig Truckle, stating, quote, "Considering all the available evidence and applying the legal elements of self-defense to that evidence, the Crown would be unable to disprove self-defense or defense of others beyond a reasonable doubt." Truckle, incidentally, has a criminal record dating back to 2004. This specific encampment where the shooting that we're talking about right now took place does play into Sherry's case, which is why we are mentioning it. Today we are talking about the disappearance of Sherry Corrigal. Now, there's not a lot of background information about Sherry online, so we were fortunate enough to connect with one of Sherry's foster mothers, Jami, for this episode. Jami has plenty of experience as a foster mother in British Columbia and was no stranger to the variety of challenges that fostering a child can bring. Oftentimes, the children that would end up in Jami's care would be children who had been removed from their family homes by the Ministry of Children and Family Development. It was not uncommon for these children to exhibit emotional immaturity for their age due to various reasons, frequently linked to neglect. Although they may be in their teens, they often function emotionally at a much younger level. This can manifest in difficulties with self-care, such as not knowing how to tie their shoes, or not realizing that they might need a heavier jacket in cold weather. It can also look like behavioral issues, like difficulty regulating emotions, self-harm, defiance, codependency, the list goes on. Now, Sherry Corrigal was born somewhere near Edmonton, Alberta on May 14, 2001. Unfortunately, her upbringing was not a stable one. We asked Jami what she knows about Sherry's early life.
I think that they moved around a lot. They were like, I think it was mom was pretty low income, so they were moving from hotel to hotel, from town to town, province to province. When they first came in to care, it was Sherry and a sibling, and Sherry was about 13 years old, and the sibling was quite younger. Um, now, they came into care as an emergency placement. I'm a foster parent, and they came in to live with me on an emergency contract, like respite. It was supposed to be like a day or two, but it didn't end up being like over a year. I'm not sure if it was a year or 2 years, but it was about that. And so, yeah, there wasn't a whole lot known, not a lot of, like, medical, dental appointments, stuff like that, so I had to get that all caught up quite a bit, like, make sure they saw the dentist and, um, went to the doctor and all that kinda stuff. And, yeah, Sherry was a feisty little thing. She wanted what she wanted and, wasn't really gonna take no easily. She'd be like, "Oh, I want hamburgers for dinner," and you're like, "Well, we're having chicken." And she'd be like, "Yeah, I want hamburgers." And she was feisty. Um, so yeah, and both her and her sibling weren't in school, so I had taken them and, like, enrolled them in school and started bringing them to school and stuff, and yeah.
So clearly, there were challenges going on that prompted the Ministry of Children and Family Development to not only get involved, but to remove Sherry and her siblings from their birth mother's care. Despite the initial challenges that Jami dealt with in terms of making sure the kids were up to date medically and getting the education they needed, there were a ton of positives as well. We wanted to know more from Jami about what Sherry was like as a person.
Well, she could be a really sweet, nice girl. She loved to shop, and I'm a shopper, and me and her would just go to the mall and buy buy up the whole store. She loved to go shopping. She loved clothes. She loved makeup, loved to do her hair, loved to go, like, she loved to eat. She was so skinny, scrawny little thing, especially when she first got to my house. She was so skinny. And I would go, like, give her, like, a lunch, or would I make her, like, a say, a bowl of Kraft Dinner for lunch. Well, I have these giant boys. My own boys are, like, well over 6 foot, huge football playing boys, and I'd give my son a bowl, and then I'd give this tiny little skinny little thing, Sherry, a bowl, and she'd be like, "Where's the rest of it?" And I'm like, "What? Like, you're really gonna eat more?" And she would just, like, eat and eat and eat. She could just pound down the food where you're just like, "Whoa," like a whole box of macaroni and cheese and a whole sandwich and a whole, like, salad or whatever else was going with it. She'd eat it all. She loved her food, and she loved to bake. Me and her would make, like, cookies and stuff like that, like banana bread cookies, whatever we make, but I'd have to, like, okay, so if I'd, like, leave the room, me and her just made, like, a whole sheet of cookies, and I'd leave the room and I'd come back and the whole sheet of cookies is gone. You're like, "Okay, Sherry, there's other kids in the house." But yeah, she could eat.
So, Sherry was essentially a typical teenage girl. She loved to shop, she loved clothes and makeup. Friends remember her as a fun person to be around. As Jami mentioned, Sherry wasn't in school leading up to the emergency foster placement that landed her in Jami's care. We wondered what that transition to public school in Nanaimo was like for Sherry.
I would really have to watch when I would drop her off at school. I'd have to sit in the parking lot and watch that she went into the school and make sure she didn't turn around and run off, which she would try to do, just try to skip out as soon as I drive away. And then I'd look in the rearview mirror and go back and say, "Nope, you're going back into the school." She did make some really close friends quite quickly after being at my house. Um, One of her best friends when she was at my house was Michaela Chang, and people from Nanaimo would definitely know the name Michaela Chang, and she was murdered, um, about, I think, about 5 years ago. They found Michaela's body after about a few months of searching, and Michaela was killed by a quite older man that she was hanging out with. Ironically, Sherry and I were, like, looking for Michaela, and, now it's me looking for Sherry. Um, but, yeah, she had quite a few quite good close friends. I think some of them still remained in contact with. Um, Now as Sherry got older and started to get a little bit hanging out with a little bit not the greatest crowd, I think she kinda strayed from some of her friends, but like, I had a candlelight vigil for her at the beginning when she first started when she we f first started going missing, to try to get more media attention and stuff on it, and quite a few of her friends, like, from when she was at my house in her younger days were there, even though they hadn't really kept that great a contact with Sherry, but, she just still had a place in their hearts, so she was a very sweet girl.
For anyone who isn't aware of the Michaela Chang case out of Nanaimo, we'll give a very brief overview. So, Michaela was last seen on March 17th, 2017, in the downtown area of Nanaimo. Initially, there was hope that she had run away as she had a history of leaving home temporarily. However, as time passed, fears for her safety grew. The search for Michaela involved numerous volunteers, extensive media coverage, and a large police effort. There were also social media campaigns and public appeals to gather information about her whereabouts. But on May 18th, 2017, Michaela's body was discovered in a rural area outside Nanaimo. The police confirmed that her death was a homicide, but details about the cause of death were not publicly disclosed. The investigation into Michaela's murder was led by the Vancouver Island Integrated Major Crime Unit. Several individuals were interviewed and various locations were searched as part of this investigation. In June 2018, so over a year after her body was discovered, Stephen Michael Bacon, a man who had been a person of interest early on in the investigation, was arrested in Ontario. He was later charged with the first-degree murder in connection with Michaela's death. Stephen Bacon's court proceedings have drawn significant public and media attention. His criminal history and his relationship with Michaela were scrutinized as part of the investigation and the trial. In December of 2021, Bacon pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 20 years.
Michaela Chang's murder deeply affected the people of Nanaimo. The tragic loss of such a young life brought attention to issues surrounding youth safety, missing persons, and the need for vigilance in protecting vulnerable individuals. This case also highlighted the importance of community involvement and support in solving crimes and seeking justice for victims. Jami did let us know that Sherry did hang out with Michaela and Stephen Michael Bacon, the 60-year-old man who killed Michaela. And Jami did not like him at all, and she didn't want Sherry hanging out with him. And with good reason, as it wasn't actually public knowledge until after he was arrested, but Bacon had charges in Ontario dating back to the 90s for sexual assault, sexual interference of a minor, sexual exploitation, and incest. Jami told us that Sherry and Michaela had started to drift apart in the years leading up to Michaela's murder. But when she heard that her friend had gone missing, Sherry was distraught. When Sherry's body was found and it was revealed that Stephen Bacon was responsible for Michaela's death, Sherry was so upset that she couldn't bring herself to attend the funeral. Now, Michaela and Sherry shared a lot of the same friend group, so ironically now, the same people who were looking for Michaela are now searching for Sherry. So Sherry lived with Jami for a few years, and then MCFD came back to collect Sherry as her birth mother regained custody of Sherry and her sibling. Here's Jami with more on that.
Well, so what happens is the parents go to court, and it was just Sherry's mom. There was not a dad involved, and I guess she had gone to court and got custody of her children back. So the children went back with her mom, and at that time they were living in a tiny little place, and I went to drop them off. Sherry did not want to leave my house, but it's not up to the kids, and I didn't want her to leave, and it's not up to the foster parent. Nothing really I can do. So the ministry phones and says, okay, their mom got custody back. They need to go back to mom's. So I went and drove them and dropped them off at the mom's. And at that time, Sherry was begging me, please don't make me go back. Please don't make me go back. I don't want to live there. And so, but I had to, and I drove them to the mom's and I dropped them off. And I remember walking into the building thinking, oh my God, of course she doesn't want to live here. It was like a tiny, tiny little 1 bedroom, not even a bedroom. It was a studio apartment. It was 1 room, a tiny little bathroom, and a tiny little kitchen with a bunk bed right in the middle of the living room. And that was where they were all sleeping, all 3 of them sleeping on the little bunk bed in the middle of the living room. So Sherry had a younger sibling and the mom, and she's like, well, I don't want to live here in the room with the same room as my mom and sibling. But I had to leave her there. So I left her there and she bolted from her mom's. And at this time she's now out of my care. There's nothing I can do. But she wouldn't live with her mom. So she was kind of couch surfing. She had a boyfriend at that time. There's a lady named Sam who has been on the news and stuff with me quite a bit. We've been working together trying to find Sherry. And Sam is one of Sherry's ex-boyfriend's mom. And so Sherry went to live there. At one point, she came back into care, back into foster care. And so what happens is when they remove children, they often quickly put other kids in your rooms. So, and then there's a certain amount of kids that you're allowed to have at a certain time. So they had already filled my beds like right away. As soon as they took the kids out, I have new kids. So, and then she's like, well, she's going back into care. And Sherry said, well, can I come live with you? And I'm like, Sherry, I can't right now because I'm full. And so my mom is a foster parent. So Sherry went to live at my mom's. So at least that way I could keep her in the family and know she's okay, but she's at my mom's. So she went to live with my mom's. Then she ended up getting taken out, supposed to go back to her mom's, went back to her mom's again. And so it was a lot of in and out between my house, Sam's house, my mom's house, where she's kind of back and forth. She was like 14, 15 at this time. Yeah, so just a lot of like Sherry didn't have a lot of she has brothers. She didn't really know them. I think they're all quite a bit older. There was some abuse allegations. There was like she just didn't have a lot of basically no family support.
So, to clarify, after living with her birth mother for a little while, Sherry found herself back in MCFD care. But this time, Jami had the foster spots in her house filled with other children, so Sherry could not return to Jami's home. Jami's mother is also a foster parent. So, they were able to secure Sherry a spot at Jami's mother's house, so at least Sherry would remain connected to the family that she was already familiar with. Jami was a safe haven for Sherry in a life filled with instability. Jami was reliable. Sherry even texted Jami before she went missing saying, quote, "You're the only normal person in my life. You're the only normal support." In some provinces, foster kids age out of care at 16. But up until 2022, in BC's care system, they aged out at 19. That has now been extended to 21 in certain circumstances. So we wanted to get an idea of what was going on for Sherry between the ages of 19 and when she went missing at 22.
Yeah, we're raising her up till about like I stayed quite close contact with her till she was about 19 because she was in and out of my mom's, I think, at about 18. And then she was on her own. They were trying to put her in like on a um young youth agreement or whatever, where she's going into her own place. There was a couple different things, but I was involved helping her do that, helping her set up income assistance and stuff like that, and just like I'd pick her up and drive her places, take her for lunch, take her to say she lost her runners and I'd go get her a new pair of runners, stuff like that. So up until about 19, and around 19 is when she started kind of pulling away a bit more, going a little bit like a lot of the time. So after a lot, what she would do is get a boyfriend and live with the boyfriend or the boyfriend's family. So as she's changing boyfriends, she's moving around, different boyfriend, and then she get a new boyfriend, and then she go live with that boyfriend, and all the different boyfriends. So I was still in contact with her, but about age 20, um, she started using street drugs. I She was using like probably over consuming alcohol and pot is all I knew at that time. Um, and um, so around 20 years old, it started. Well, she would post um, something on her Facebook, like it was like a line of a picture of a snow and said, "I'm going out tonight." And it was like pictures of snow in a line. And I messaged her and said, "What? Why are you posting that? What are you doing? Like cocaine, whatever." And she's like, it was just like a meme on Facebook. And I was like, "Why are you posting that? You better not be doing that." She's like, "Calm down. I'm not doing that. It was just a joke. It's just a picture of snow." But stuff like that where I'm starting to pick up and think, I think she might be getting into a little bit harder drugs than pot. Just and then she just started being I had saw her once, like, randomly ran into her, and I thought, "Well, I think she's kind of looking awfully skinny and like she might be starting to dabble a lot more than she should be." So, at this time, I'm starting to, like, not see her as much. She's starting to pull away, like, I would message her and she'd I'd message her and give her shit for something like, "Okay, you better smarten up. What are you doing about your job? You said you were gonna go to school. Let's kinda plan this." She'd phone me and say, "Can you help me get some ID?" and stuff like that, and I would do it, and then at that time, I would be like, okay, we need to make a plan. You need to go to school. You need to get a job. And so she's like, kind of like nagging her a bit. So she'd message me and talk and stuff like that. But I had not really started seeing her for the last 2 years.
Jami recalls attempting to meet up with Sherry to give her a birthday gift, but struggling to get a hold of her. When she could not, she knew that something was wrong.
So around the time that she went missing, I was supposed to be meeting her up in the summer, meeting up with her. It was her birthday, and I had a present that I still hadn't dropped off to her. And so this is her birthday's in May, but it was like about August that I started like, okay, I need to drop this present off. Like, where are you? What are you doing? And she'd like message me, okay, I can do it tomorrow. I'm going to take you out for tea. So this is now, so it was kind of going back and forth. Oh, I can't do it this week. I can't do it that week. Both of us were kind of going back and forth. So we were trying to arrange to meet up. So this is now into September. And then I start messaging her around the middle of September. And I start messaging her like, and she's just not answering me back. And it was really weird because she would never not answer me. She would maybe take a couple hours to answer me, but she would always answer me. Like, I'm just like, are you okay? What are you doing? Where are you? I just kind of wanted to know, keep tabs on her and make sure she was okay. So this is now into September of 2023, and she's just not answering me. And I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? Why is she not answering me? Then send her another message. Now she has multiple Facebooks, and she would change her phone number often. She would lose her phone or have her phone stolen. So the best way for me to connect with her was through Facebook. And she's got about 4 or 5 different Facebook accounts. So I'd message all of them and I'd be like, come on, like, what are you doing? Answer me. I got to drop this present off. She kept saying she was going to buy me tea. And so I would be like, are we going to go for lunch? And I'll drop the present off. And she just wasn't answering me, wasn't answering me. And then I'm starting to get concerned, like, where is she? And then I believe it was, so now I'm starting to wonder, but I'm thinking in my head, okay, she must be using drugs and she doesn't want me to see. She knows I'm going to nag her. She knows I'm going to get mad at her. I'm going to try to get her straight. So she's probably just not calling me, but everybody else knows where she is. This is what I'm thinking in my head. But I didn't realize that other people hadn't seen her either. So now it's getting into like November. So I believe November 11th was somebody, her ex-boyfriend, Brandon Brown, had messaged on her Facebook, and it was on one of the accounts that I was friends with, and said, like, has anybody seen Sherry? Where is Sherry? And at this time, I'm like, what? Like, he hasn't seen her either. So I don't even know this Brandon Brown. I had never even met him, but I messaged him on Facebook and said, like, you put a Facebook message on Sherry's page where asking where she is. Have you not seen her? And who are you? Basically, I thought it was one of her brothers. And he said, no, I'm her ex-boyfriend. I was in contact with her like on a daily basis. And she just hasn't stopped by or phoned or called or anything for like a couple months now. And I'm getting worried. And at that time, I started freaking out like, uh-oh, like something's wrong. And then I had phoned the police. I phoned it started getting the ball rolling, phoning the media and stuff, putting posters up. I went and made posters and flyers and cards and stuff like that, put them all over town. And after I had got the police file number and stuff like that, and the police brought me in for questioning, like just asking me about where she is, what's her phone number, what's her Facebook profiles, all this stuff. And so I had been in quite a few times with the police trying to help them figure it all out. And yeah, and I contacted Brandon Brown, and him and I have talked a lot throughout the whole thing, kind of just trying to piece everything together, trying to figure out. A lot of people in town were kind of seemed to be pointing fingers at Brandon Brown just because it seems like he was the last person to have contact with her, and probably the last person to have seen her at the time when I first started talking to him. But him and I had later figured out that she was seen by multiple people the next day, so we don't think he was the last person to see her. And personally, I didn't think that he had done anything to her, but it was the gossip around town. The rumors were starting. But at this point, I don't think Brandon has anything to do with it at all. He's been helping a lot, and yeah.
So, according to Brandon Brown, he had picked up Sherry earlier in the day on September 11th, 2023, from a guy's house in Parksville where she had been staying. Now, Parksville is located about an hour outside of Nanaimo to the north. Other information has come to light that this guy that she was staying with in Parksville was controlling Sherry and not letting her use her phone or talk to other people. And as has already been acknowledged in this podcast episode, Sherry was heavily using drugs at this point in her life. So Brandon states that the reason he didn't want Sherry staying at his house on the day that he picked her up is because she was trying to light a crack pipe in his residence where there were children present. They reached an agreement that he would drop her off on Franklin Street near Selby Street, and it should be noted that there is a homeless encampment near that intersection. Not right beside it, but just a little ways away. He dropped her off there around 6:45 p.m., said goodbye, and the two made plans for the next day. Brendan also said that the two would keep daily contact with one another even if Sherry was using. So we're now going to take a quick break, and when we return, we will get more into the limited timeline that exists, the searches, and what the prevailing theory is. And we are back. So the timeline in this case has been hard to cobble together for various reasons. However, Jami has been pounding the pavement and knocking on doors looking for answers. She filled us in on some of the things that she has learned so far.
So on September 11th, Brandon dropped her off downtown Nanaimo and basically dropped her off downtown and never saw her again. Uh, that's the thing. He he did tell me he dropped her off at the casino. So but later on he had changed it to a parking lot that was a couple blocks away. But I think maybe he drove past the parking lot at the casino and then ended up going up to the other parking lot or whatever. And so somewhere in the downtown area of Nanaimo, he dropped her off. And then we, like, through all this, Brandon, myself, Sam, and there was another friend of hers that were all helping us trying to figure out where she was. And we were going around talking to people. And at that point, we saw other people. There's uh, I think it's a safe injection site, and there's like uh, people can go in and get food and stuff like that. There's a food truck for people. Um, and we had gone around. We were talking to other people, and at that time we had realized that they had seen her downtown the next day, around that same area, somewhere around the safe injection site in town, and people had saw her that day. So we were walking around talking to all these people trying to figure out. But basically, we saw her. We got her till the next day in that area, and then nothing since. Not one valid sighting, nothing.
So since September 11th or possibly the 12th now, Sherry Corrigal has not been seen or heard from. She's not used her 5 Facebook accounts, her banking, or picked up any of her checks. The timeline is a little shaky due to the transient nature of her lifestyle, as well as the people who last saw her. Jami did confirm with us that Sherry was accessing services through nonprofits in that area where she was dropped off by Brandon that day. Things like shelters, food programs, overdose prevention sites, harm reduction materials, and general wraparound services in that area. We know that Sherry was living a transient sort of lifestyle, but we wanted to know if there was any stable housing that she was using, somewhere that she would primarily be living at that time.
I actually still don't know that. I think she did not like she definitely didn't have like her own apartment. It was basically staying at boys' houses. Now, through all of this after she's gone missing, I think there was times where she was sleeping in a tent outside. But I believe that was just at the very end. I know of a couple different places she was sleeping and staying. She was at a house in Parksville. There's, like, basically boyfriends and guys, she would stay at their houses for, like, a few weeks at a time or a few months at a time or something, but I think at the very end before she went missing, I think she was starting to be homeless, because I didn't know that she was hanging out at that safe injection site and um, like, in tents and stuff until after she had gone missing. So I think it wasn't very long.
So the evidence suggests that after couch surfing for many months, Sherry had begun hanging out at the ops site and possibly living in a tent at a nearby homeless encampment. As many of you may remember from our episode about Carmel Gilmore, these places can be incredibly dangerous for vulnerable women. They are often run with a hierarchy consisting of primarily men who control things in these camps. And these camps and the outside of ops sites are often preyed on by predatory drug dealers. Now, because of the nature of Sherry's disappearance, it was difficult to organize searches for her. Keep in mind, she was last seen in September, but not reported missing until November. It wasn't even very clear where exactly she had gone missing from. All they really had was this intersection where she was dropped off and some pretty vague sightings of her in the same area. There's no media or news articles online about official searches for her that were done by the police or search and rescue. We do know that Sherry's foster mother, Jami, and Samantha, who was the mother of Sherry's ex-boyfriend, and other friends and family did do a lot of postering in the area and interviewing of people. They also did their absolute best to get local news agencies to cover Sherry's disappearance. There's also been a lot of help from Cindy Hall, who runs the Lisa Marie Young Facebook group and is an advocate in that case. But without more information about her last location, it was near impossible to begin to retrace her steps. We know that the investigation into Sherry's disappearance is open and active. We did reach out to the Nanaimo RCMP for a statement on this case, but they politely declined as the investigation remains ongoing. In their official media release for Sherry's disappearance, the police state, quote, "We are asking anyone who saw Sherry around the time of her disappearance or since then to contact the police directly. Police are aware of social media posts going around asking people to contact persons other than the police with information. This has resulted in numerous unsubstantiated rumors circulating around what may have happened to Sherry. Police need to speak directly with anyone with first-hand information about Sherry's whereabouts. Rumors are just that, rumors. They are a very poor source of information for the investigative team." So with regards to rumor, there have been many, but they tend to center around the same location and similar people, meaning that the same names seem to keep on popping up. Many of these rumors have been gruesome in nature and have made the experience a lot more difficult for Sherry's loved ones. Here's Jami.
So there's been some crazy rumors, like somebody chopped her up into pieces and sewed some Asian woman's legs onto Sherry. That was one of the rumors. I'm like, it was just so absurd. But um, there's been some really serious talk about two people in particular, two guys. I believe they're brothers. Um, and there's some pretty serious allegations that there's a whole lot of people in town talking about. And I do know that the police are investigating, but I have no idea what, like, place they are in their investigation. But I'm really starting to believe that these rumors are probably true just by how many people in town are talking about it. Unfortunately, with the group of people that she was hanging out with, they're not the kind of people that work with the police, that go to the police, that talk with the police. So we're hearing stuff, secondhand information from other people. Well, this is what happened and this is who did it. And we're like, well, we need somebody to talk to the police, somebody who actually knows firsthand. And that's the thing with these small towns. It's like, well, one person hears it, then the next person, it's like a game of telephone. Something gets added on, something gets like taken off. We need people with actual information that know firsthand and not just I heard it from so and so. We need people that actually know to go to the police and help. Tell somebody where she is. I just really want. I'm pretty much like 99% sure we're not going to have an alive Sherry. We're not going to find her alive now. It's been too late. She hasn't been able to access any services. She has no money. I highly doubt that she's okay. I just feel she's so feisty that if she was alive somewhere, somebody was like holding her for sex trade or anything like that, she's so feisty. She could fight and get out of that. And she would message somebody, call somebody. She would have a way to get out of that by now. I mean, I could see it happening for a week or 2 weeks or a couple days or something, but after that, it's like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I think we're probably looking for a body at this point, which is absolutely terrible, but if it is a body, it just drives me crazy thinking that she's lying out there in a ditch, in a field, somewhere by herself. I just want her buried with dignity.
So we did dig a little deeper by speaking to some folks off of the record for this case. We wanted to dig into what the main theory was or the most commonly shared theory. Of course, nothing of what we heard we were able to corroborate. This is just sort of rumor that's going around. And it's very similar to other episodes that we've covered. Essentially, the two men who Jami had mentioned in the rumor that she had heard, we've heard that they're rumored to be brothers and have a lot of influence in the street community. Both have lengthy criminal histories and are pretty bad guys. One is more of a drug dealer while the other one is more of an enforcer or muscle. The rumor is that Sherry somehow crossed these two. It was either a drug debt, a theft, or something along those lines. Those men then took Sherry's life. The rumor then goes on to say that her body was disposed of once. Then, when the media started reporting on the case, her remains were moved to a second location. We're not going to speculate on those locations as this is an active ongoing investigation. However, we have heard that this investigation is very much alive, and movement is being made on this file.
Sherry has now been missing for almost a year. Her friends and loved ones are desperate to find her and bring her home, whether she's alive or deceased. Jami firmly believes that there are at least a handful of people out there who know more than they are saying, and it's time for one of those people to come forward and speak to law enforcement. There are many people out there who are missing Sherry and just want answers. You need to come forward for them. And you need to come forward for yourself to get this off of your shoulders. If this case is indeed what Jami and we believe it is, a homicide, there's a dangerous, violent offender that remains in the community as long as people keep Sherry's disappearance a secret. Here's Jami.
And I know that so many people know it's just so. I mean, one of her very good friends, I think, knows and isn't talking. And that just disgusts me. I think, these people might be scared of this person, but if you're scared of him, it makes more sense to call the police and tell them what you know so that the police can protect you. If you phone the police and tell them what you know, maybe they can put this guy away and then you don't need to be scared of him. So now you're just leaving the guy on the streets that has potentially killed somebody for a little bag of dope. This is what the story is. Then aren't you scared of him hurting you? Like he could do that to you. So call the police and get rid of him, get him in jail so that you're not scared of him too. Just that makes the most sense.
According to Jami, the rumor that she and others hear the most is that Sherry's life ended in downtown Nanaimo or near downtown Nanaimo. We know that people listening may be speculating on what happened to Sherry Corrigal. Could she have overdosed, committed suicide, ran away? Here's Jami with her thoughts on that.
Well, I think that if she did do that, I mean, I don't think Sherry would commit suicide, but if there was a possibility, if she was high or something like that, she wouldn't have been able to hide herself or bury herself. So we would have found a body. So that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. The places that she was going, downtown Nanaimo, is a pretty populated area. So if she was to do that, I think she would have been found. I think she's been hidden by somebody. She can't hide herself if she commits suicide. So I just don't think there's much to that theory. I think we would have found her by now. If she had overdosed um, somewhere, we would have found her. There it just doesn't make a lot of sense. The thing is Sherry was so concerned about other people's feelings, particularly Sam and I. She would not let me worry about it. She always I would send her a message and say, like, "I'm worried about you. Are you okay?" And she'd be like, "Yes, I'm fine. I'm doing this. You don't need to worry," and, like, just laugh at us or whatever, but she wouldn't let me worry. Um, Now, when Sherry first came into my house, um, to live with me, my husband had passed away of cancer when we were, like, 40, and that was right when Sherry was living with me. She was so concerned about my feelings, and she knew that my husband had just died, and she would always make sure that I was okay, even though, like, I'm taking care of her, I'm the mom, but she wouldn't let me freak out about this for this long. She'd see me on the news and talking and stuff. I just know that she wouldn't let me worry about this.
We're now at the portion of the episode where we give our listeners tangible ways to help. We want to underline that we believe this missing persons case is very solvable and is likely going to take just one person coming forward with the missing piece of information that will lead law enforcement to locate Sherry. Jami gave us her thoughts on how our listeners can help.
Basically, I mean, I have a Finding Sherry Corrigal Facebook page. They can join that. They could print off posters and put them around. Um, where it like particularly not Nanaimo, because I've really put a lot of posters in Nanaimo and even Victoria, but more like other places that aren't just in Nanaimo. Um, but putting posters up, stuff like that, basically just getting the word out that Sherry's missing and that she's wanted and that she's loved, and she had a hard life. She did the best she could with what she had, and she was trying. She wanted so badly to get, like, a proper job. There was so many times where she wanted to be a nurse, she wanted to be a social worker, she wanted to be a foster parent. There were so many things that she was thinking of. I believe there was, like, plumbing or electrical she was thinking of at the um, that's what Sam had mentioned, something like that, plumbing or electrician but she wanted to get a proper job, and she had dreams and hopes that she wanted, and just couldn't get over the childhood trauma, and it was just too much. So trying to turn her feelings off with drugs and hanging out with the wrong people. So, and the thing is Sherry looked really, really young. I mean, some of the posters that I had put up, those were pictures of her recent, like 23, 20, 22 years old. And she looks like she's so little. She was short and she was little and skinny. And she was so little, and she had just such a little baby angel face that she just looked like she was like 14. So many men and could just, prey on her. Just she was so vulnerable.
We will provide a link to the Finding Sherry Corrigal Facebook group in the show notes of this episode. Please join it and stay up to date with this case. Those who are able to print posters, we'd ask that you do so and put them up around your city or town. Above all, let's keep Sherry's name and face out there to let people know that she is missed, loved, and that people are looking for her. Finally, we wanted to give Jami a platform to give a message to those out there who may be listening that either had direct or indirect involvement in Sherry's disappearance.
Yeah, I hope you can't sleep at night. And I hope you see her face when you close your eyes and she haunts you. And I really think that you should let us know where her body is. There's so many ways you could just tell us where her body is. You want to shut me up? Tell me where she is. Because I'm not going to shut up and I'm not going to give up until we have her properly put to rest with dignity. And she was a sweet, loving person. And there's so many things that you could have done different. And basically, tell us where she is.
Sherry Corrigal is 22 years old, stands 5 feet tall, and weighs between 90 and 100 pounds. She has dark brown hair and several distinctive tattoos on her arms, hands, and back. Police are seeking information from anyone who may have seen Sherry in early September 2023 or who knows anything about her current location. Please contact the Nanaimo RCMP at 250-754-2345. Sherry did not have an easy life. The odds were stacked against her, but she had hopes and dreams and desperately wanted to make changes to her lifestyle in order to start working toward those goals. Sherry deserves a chance to come home to those she loves. So if you know something, say something. Regardless of what the rumors say, Sherry is still missing and she needs to be found. Any help that anyone on the island can provide would be incredibly appreciated. Sherry deserves to be cared about, and her story is absolutely heartbreaking. Thank you for joining us on this episode of True North True Crime. If you want more TNTC, you can subscribe to TNTC Plus on Apple Podcasts or over on Patreon. For $5 a month, you will get access to exclusive bonus episodes, early access to regular episodes on Mondays instead of Thursdays, and all of our episodes will be completely ad-free. You can also follow us on Instagram at TNTC Pod or on Facebook by searching True North True Crime. That's all we have for this episode. We will see you again soon with a brand new one. Until then, stay safe, everyone.
Stay safe.